I call this regular session of the Villa Park Planning and Zoning Commission to order. With Chairman Whitehurst not here, I entertain a motion for a Chairman Pro Tem.
I'll make a motion for Chairman Pro Tem. Jason Chair.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, let's do roll call. Orlowski,
Here.
Benanga,
Yes.
Bello,
Yes.
and Calvert.
Here.
And I too am present. And let's see. First item of business will be approval of minutes for July 12th, 2018.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from July 12th.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Support.
Any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none, roll call. Benanga,
Yes.
Bello,
Yes.
Orlowski,
Yes.
Calvert,
Yes.
and I too vote yes. With that, the motion passes. All right. Move into public hearings. First public hearing will be continuance of petition PZ 180007, rezoning and annexation of property located at 17 West 479 Manor Lane. Petitioner Leticia Valdez. Do you have any comments? Director Grill?
This item was continued from the July meeting for the petitioner to provide some additional information. Staff didn't receive any additional information. However, I think the commission was forwarded an email that I received earlier this week from Michael Canuco regarding rezoning petition of RJ Concrete Incorporated, Leticia Valdez, President, property address 17 West 479 Manor Lane, Villa Park, 60101. The letter reads, Dear Mr. Brill, please be advised this office has just been retained by RJ Concrete Incorporated and Leticia Valdez, President, to represent them in the rezoning of 17 West 479 Manor Lane, Villa Park, Illinois, 601 to M1 Light Industrial. It is my understanding that the Planning and Zoning Commission has this set for a hearing on September 13, 2018. Due to recently being retained by the petitioner, I must review all documentation which has been generated and will not be in a position to attend a hearing on September 13, 2018. Therefore, I'm requesting from the Planning and Zoning Commission to continue the hearing to October 11th, which does have to be our next regular scheduled meeting, so that I may properly present this matter to the Commission. Please confirm the undersigned with confirmation of continuance. Thank you very much for your courtesy in this matter. Michael R. Canuco, Attorney at Law. As this item was continued, and there is a request for petition for continuance, you may choose to continue this to the October 11th meeting, or you can just continue discussion and make a recommendation on the petition if you wish.
All right, what was the date on that letter again?
Petition has not changed. Date on that letter was September 6th.
Okay, and you said you had no contact with the petitioner? No additional information?
No additional information.
Okay. Well, I guess if there's a motion for continuance. All right, hearing no motion for continuance, I guess we will continue the public hearing this evening. What I'm going to do, since this was continued, is give the petitioner an additional chance to speak. And then I will ask for, if there's additional testimony from the public, now would be tonight would be your chance to give it. If you spoke last time, you don't need to stand up and say the same things. I think everybody up here heard it, and all of that is on the record. There's a court transcript right here that was approved. So if you've got new information you want to provide us, please do. Or if you didn't speak last time, please do. The other thing is, if you think you're going to speak on this item tonight, stand up now and be sworn in with the court reporter all at once. If you were sworn in last time, you don't need to be sworn in this time. So if you weren't sworn in last time and you want to speak tonight, stand up and be sworn in. I don't see anyone? Yeah. Yeah, I think you were. I recognize you. Yeah. All right, so when you come up and speak, also name and address again for the court reporter. And so we'll start with the petitioner. You have anything you want to add? No. Okay. Staff, anything you want to add?
No. And as the petitioner didn't provide any additional information, staff has no additional comments.
Okay, thank you. Anybody from the audience that wants to add evidence for tonight, please come up, state your name and address for the record.
James Smithson, 17W530 Manor Lane. First thing, we weren't notified about this, and that's what they let us know, which is an important one there.
Just real quick, when we continued last time, it was to a date certain.
Yeah, I didn't.
So
okay.
that's why it doesn't
fine.
get republished.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Also, I believe you guys told them to stop. Didn't stop. Not 1 minute, not 1 day. Up to total about 45 minutes.
Okay.
Obviously, that's it.
All right, thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak?
My name is Tina Schmidt. I live at 17W445 Manor Lane, Villa Park. My concern is we're having fires in the back of the yard, and there's no running water. I'd like to know who I'm supposed to call, because I don't know what address they're for. It's either village or county, and the back is village, and I don't have an address there.
If they're burning illegally, I would call the Villa Park Fire Department and let them sort it out.
The address,
But
The bad address,
there's no address.
just tell them,
Mailbox, there's no address.
17 West 479.
But they're gonna say it's unincorporated.
Explain to them that it's in the back portion of Hill Park.
Okay. And then also at our court date with the county, we were threatened to the fact that if we didn't go along with this, that we'd be tortured by the guy who's already behind me, and they're just gonna have 100 more trucks on this, because that's what's gonna sell it. And that's all I'm gonna say.
anyone else wishing to speak? All right. Any questions from the commission based on what we've heard today? All right. I'm going to give you one last chance if you've got any closing comments, because then we'll close the public hearing, and there'll be no more comments from anyone. All right, thank you. So we'll close the public hearing, move into discussion by commission members. Any discussion? Yep. All right, I'll entertain a motion. Either need a motion to approve or recommend approval or recommend denial, one or the other, or continuance. And I can't make it.
I don't have the actual verbiage, but I would move to not endorse this.
Yeah, that you recommend
Okay?
denial. Yeah, recommend denial
Well,
of.
thank you. I move to not approve application PZ 180007 for rezoning from R4 in unincorporated DuPage County to M1 in Villa Park for property at 17 West 479 Manor Lane with the PIN 06-03-107-006.
We have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Any questions or comments on the motion as read? Roll call. Benega?
Yes.
Bello?
Yes.
Orlowski?
Yes.
Calvert?
Yes.
And I too vote yes. So with that, our recommendation passes to the village board. They have the ultimate final say in this. Ours, part of the process is just a recommendation. So if you have any other questions or comments, take it up with the village board. Thank you. Okay, so that is the end of our public hearing for this evening. We're moving into discussion on the pilot program regarding chickens. My guess is do you want to keep the court reporter for that, or are you going to keep minutes?
Well,
Okay,
even though it's not public hearing.
yeah. So how many people here think they want to speak? Not just that you're in favor of chickens, but think you have something to say? Okay. So what we'll do after Patrick introduces things is you'd come up, state your name and address. You don't need to be sworn in. This isn't a public hearing. And we will take your comments and then we'll go from there.
At a board meeting last month, the village board requested that the planning and zoning commission come up with a recommendation on a pilot program for chickens. We have discussed this at a number of previous commission meetings earlier this year, although we never came up with either a full pilot program or any specific recommendations to the village board on this issue. After it became known that the commission was going to be considering this again, I received a number of emails that I feel compelled to read into the record. The first one is, good afternoon. I would like to express my support towards changes in policy that would allow backyard hens in Villa Park. There are several locations or several local communities that allow hens without much difficulty. I think it makes the village attractive to current and potential residents. Eggs are a perfect food. My family purchases premium organic eggs and would seriously consider raising hens of our own. Of course, common sense rules would have to apply for this to work. Villa Park Backyard Chickens Group, customers of Pioneer Feed, and other members of the community all have important opinions to share on best practices. This movement has my full support. Kind regards, Jennifer McKenzie, 242 South Monterey Avenue. Next one. Mr. Grill, I would like to register my opposition to allowing backyard chickens in Villa Park. I have a number of reasons for this opinion. Having a neighbor nearby with chickens is likely to decrease the comfort of living for the rest of us. Noise is one reason, smell is another, but also by attracting other animals such as mice, rats, coyotes, feral cats, and so on. There isn't much even the most responsible chicken owner can do to completely prevent these problems. Further, these problems could affect the safety of other families in the area. Naturally, predators such as coyotes will be drawn by the smell to areas where chickens are permitted. Increased coyote activity will cause our children and pets to be in danger. Increases in mice and rats are a self-explanatory concern. Ask yourself this: what will your response be when someone comes to you with a story about their family poodle was killed by a coyote drawn to the area by nearby chickens? Or God forbid, a child gets bit by a coyote because the neighbors have had to have a few chickens. Who will bear the cost for these kinds of incidents? Additionally, there was a recent article in the Tribune about chickens titled, CDC, Backyard Chickens Are Spreading Salmonella to People. Also, the CDC recently released a report titled Multi-State Outbreaks of Salmonella Infections Linked to Contact with Live Poultry in Backyard Flocks. While certainly some chicken owners would be extremely responsible with their chickens and minimize these problems, especially early on, let's look 10 years down the road when it's no longer new and more people decide to have chickens. People can't keep their grass cut. How can we expect people to be responsible with chickens? All we will accomplish is to need to have a whole bureaucracy to manage chickens. Workload for code enforcement would increase, likely requiring hiring more people. Then you will have the irresponsible people who the village will look to revoke their chicken permit, who will drag their children crying into board meetings because the mean village wants to take their pet chickens, and people will argue that we don't regulate dogs to this degree, so it's not fair to regulate chickens. In the end, I expect it will be a mess. All this so someone can get a few fresh eggs, which is already available for purchase at places like Mike's Meat Market. Where does it end? Today, chickens. But many of the same arguments in favor of chickens can be applied to goats, cows, hogs, etc. It doesn't seem prudent to me as far as on a village planning level and life comfort level for the rest of us. If people want to live in a farm environment, they can move to a farm town. The rest of us choose to live in a suburban environment. Don't take that away from us. Thank you for your time. Joey DiTomaso, 455 North Harvard Avenue. Next one. Dear Pat, as a homeowner and taxpayer in Villa Park, I would be in favor of the above endeavor. Sincerely, Al Gorski. The next one. Hello. First off, I wanted to let you know that your email is incorrect on the flyer. I'm not sure what she was talking about that she was forwarded. I've copied and pasted the body of my original email below for ease of reading. I can't make this meeting, but would like this email to represent my support for allowing chickens in Villa Park, with, of course, the caveat of no roosters and with clear guidelines in place from the village. One specific topic as far as guidelines that I feel should definitely be addressed is to make sure that there are hygienic procedures solidly defined for when the chickens reach the end of their days. Thank you. Leslie Cam. Next one. Hello, my name is Katie Wilder, and I'm a resident of Villa Park. I have been following this issue as it has been discussed by the Planning and Zoning Commission for the last 6 months. I have been in attendance at past meetings, but regret that I will be unable to attend tomorrow night's board meeting. I was told that you would be willing to read any comments pertaining to the Backyard Chickens pilot program that you were emailed, so that I thought you would take the opportunity to introduce myself and hopefully speak to any concerns or objections that may have been raised by the board to allowing residents to keep a small number of backyard hens. Please forgive me if any of these have been discussed at length already. I just want to cover my bases since I can't be at the meeting in person. I'm sure there may be more questions asked than I have tried to answer in my attached document, but I try to choose ones that persistently arise when towns begin to pursue this course of action. For example, I did not address the concern that chickens are just a gateway drug for people like me, and once they are given the freedom to produce their own eggs, they will go crazy and ask for a goat, a pig, or a cow next. But I promise you, I have no such aspirations, even having grown up on a farm where all of those animals were present. I know my limitations and those of the patch of grass my house sits on. Thank you again for your willingness to read my attached responses to concerns regarding backyard chickens. Sincerely, Katie Wilder. Hello, Mr. Grill. My name is Anton Dimov. I live at 441 South Ardmore Avenue, and I have lived in Villa Park for 10+ years. I am a supporter of backyard chickens. I don't know if I would be able to attend on Thursday because I just found out about the meeting, so I am sending this email instead. I strongly support backyard chickens. I have seen a similar program in place in Portland, Oregon, where I have relatives. The neighbors of my relatives had 4 backyard hens. I never heard them once for a week I was there. I think raising chickens and growing your own food in your backyard is the path to a sustainable future. Furthermore, one knows exactly what goes into their food, and there is no fear of pesticides or chickens full of antibiotics. Thank you, Anton. That was the extent of the emails that I received relative to this issue. Given everything that we had discussed in the past, I went back and I thought that as pilot programs go, it seemed that Bartlett had a pretty reasonable one. In fact, they just continued or extended their pilot program. It's gone 2 years and they extended it for another 2 years. And although they have up to 25 licenses, only 9 have been applied for and received. But if you had looked at their requirements and regulations as it relates to chickens, they've got A through O. And if you were interested in doing this, I would make a suggestion that that you would allow chickens to be permitted to be on residentially zoned lots containing a minimum of 7,500 square feet. Bartlett uses 8,000, but because the majority of our lots are 7,500, I would suggest changing it to 7,500. And then the last one, O, where it says a maximum of 25 residential zoning lots will be licensed to have chickens in the village at one time, I would suggest moving that to 10. We can always revisit this at some point in the past, and if it's wildly successful, we can always choose to increase the number of licenses. Same with the number of hens. In this particular pilot program, they limited it to 4 hens. I know some people said, well, maybe it should be more. I would be of the opinion, if it seems to work, maybe we'll consider increasing that at some point in the future. But as a pilot program, I think 4 chickens would be plenty. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the commission.
All right. Let the record show that Commissioner Jackson arrived at 7:50. Patrick, I'll take questions from comments, but do you happen to have the list of, when we forward our recommendation to the board, previously we had a list of things we definitely wanted to be covered in the ordinance? Is that something you have or could maybe dig out of the record?
I'll see what I can find.
Yeah. I looked through my notes at home
I couldn't find mine either.
and didn't find them.
Yeah.
I know there were about 8 or 10 specific portions that we wanted to see. I don't think we got into numbers necessarily, but okay. So anyone wishing to speak, now please come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. So who's going to be first?
Hello, my name is Karen Solom, and I live at 329 East Park Boulevard. And I'm taking over for Katie, who formerly had introduced this program into Villa Park. She did a great job. And I thank you all for letting us continue with this. And for Patrick, because he's been a great help. We have a petition that also we wanted to put into the record. As of today, there are 234 signed names. Some are anonymous, but for the most part, a lot of these people live in Villa Park, and they are for legalizing this eventually after the pilot.
If you wouldn't mind just maybe letting us take a look at that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I have
then,
one copy if that's okay.
no, that's fine. And then
Yeah.
send a copy to Patrick if you haven't already,
Sure.
so he can have it in the file.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did see that online.
Okay.
petition, And I can verify that as of 6:06 this evening, there were 234 people that had signed.
Okay, thank you.
If you do go on there, there's also some public comments that people have made, similar to what Patrick had read from emails.
Okay, thank you.
If you care to look at that. I'm in favor. I would love to be part of the pilot program and have a limit, as to when that would be over, and then bring it back if it's successful, and formally write that into the Village Park or Villa Park ordinance. That would be great. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Patricia Schwal. I live on 611 South Oakland. I've lived in Villa Park my whole life, but I recently just bought a home. And I could say when I was looking for homes, I really looked at a lot of other towns just because I've always wanted to have chickens. I believe in being able to sustain and have our own food products and, from doing eggs to our garden. I just think as a village, it would be very beneficial for a lot of people because I think a lot are interested in it. And it would be very exciting just to see how it would work out. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is Katie. I'm at 1510 South Oakland Avenue. Though I am passing, hi Karen, nice to meet you face to face. Karen stepped up and has a little bit more experience in the process, so she graciously offered to help. One of the things that we discussed before that I think would be a really awesome idea to add is that the support that the families would have that are a part of the pilot program, we offered to educate, to help, you know, some of the issues were about the critters or whatever, to really give some good sound information and some research that's been done, but also to support one another in the community of what to do when a chicken gets sick, how to properly handle those situations, or when they're done laying eggs, finding safe places to bring them. So we offered that, as well as just the educational portion of it, pairing with the Pioneer Shop or the, you know, other events that are happening in the community, bringing chickens out, bringing awareness to what it's all about. It's not just about, you know, the eggs, but it's about the bonding that people have with the chickens, what it does for the earth, and what it does for the families and the communities as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is David Bravos. I live at 441 South Ardmore Avenue. I've been a resident of Villa Park for over 10 years, and I wanted to just express my support for allowing chickens in Villa Park. I think it would really fit with our motto, the Garden Village. I think that the right to grow our own food in a responsible way is very important.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Jack Noble. I live at 609 South Addison. I've lived in Villa Park for 25 years, and I think it's very important to know where your food comes from, and having chickens is a great way to start that and start knowing responsibility for kids, taking care of chickens. And I really have found that they're much quieter than dogs and are really great to have in a suburban atmosphere.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jack Kozar. I live at 329 East Park. So a lot of what this really is about is choices and being able to have the freedom in the community where you live to make good and decent, prudent choices. The email that came in with regard to various articles, I was familiar with one of the articles, not the others. It was actually kind of taken out of context because one of the articles talked about like flocks of chickens when people are raising those for commercial ventures within a neighborhood. So not specifically applicable. However, if the board would like me to address any of those articles in a rebuttal, I'd be happy to formally submit something to you outside of this meeting, so that those articles can be taken factually and not just as kind of a hearsay, label or, something that's just not backed up factually. I'd be happy to do that if the board would like that. Chickens are good for business. You've got Pioneer in town that has a little section in their store that sells various items related to chickens, and people come from surrounding neighborhoods to shop at Pioneer. Pioneer is good for the community. It's good for the tax roll. It's good for business. Gets people into our community. We were voted one of the top communities in the United States. Being a top community means that we're progressive, that we're looking ahead, we're following trends, we're making wise decisions, which is what the board is here to do, is to make wise decisions and be informed and be factually informed. Additionally, one of the arguments that I've heard is that it's going to take resources away from Villa Park in enforcement or time or something like that. Number one, I don't think that it would take resources away because we could charge for a permit fee that would add money, at least to compensate whatever resources might be taken in terms of time. Additionally, if the board thinks it would make sense, we could have a volunteer chicken commissioner that goes out and actually looks at the various people in the pilot program and gives the board a periodic update to it. That could be a volunteer role. I would volunteer for that. So all in all, it's about choices and it's about being progressive. Villa Park's an awesome community. I've been in Villa Park for over 20 years, and I mean, there's no other place that I'd rather be than Villa Park. So I think it would be fun to raise chickens in Villa Park. I'm a partial owner of a farm out in Sycamore, and out there we have 150 plus flock of chickens that we raise organically, and I have to tell you, they're the best eggs that you've ever had. I would have loved to have brought you all a dozen eggs, but I don't know that it would be appropriate. So, I mean, there is such a difference between a store-bought egg and an egg that's raised organically or at home, you know, and just the condition that those chickens are raised in. Production chickens are raised in tiny little cages, and it's just a miserable life. What we do out in Sycamore is the chickens have lots of room to run and, you know, live and be chickens. Having a few chickens, 4, 6 chickens, you know, in your backyard gives those chickens the same freedom. They run around, they eat the bugs, you know, they're loved by their owners. I know it sounds funny to love a chicken, but, you know, it's true. They become a pet. They're responsive, and it's fun, and it's progressive. So I hope that you guys really look to this program. I think it's a great, you know, to do the pilot program is a great opportunity. Give it a shot. I think, you know, if you do a pilot program for a couple of years like Bartlett did, and so many of the surrounding communities, you'll find that there's very little to any problems with it. Your average person who is having backyard chickens is not just getting chickens and just letting them be. I mean, they care about the chickens, they nurture the chickens. You know, it's not really even about saving money on the eggs. You know, the eggs end up becoming $2 a piece by the time you factor in all your time and everything else, you know, into them. So this is not a production type thing. 4 to 6 chickens at home, it's a lot of fun. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yep.
Hi, I'm Angie Rojek. I'm a Villa Park resident, and I also own Pioneer Garden and Feed, which has been brought up a couple of times. Thank you. So I wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of the things. I mean, I think we all know that everyone here that's in support of the chicken and hen program for the health, you know, for fresh eggs, all that. I think that's clear to the board. What I did want to talk about was the progressive part that Jack mentioned. So since my husband and I bought Pioneer in 2015, we sold, so we have 50-pound bags of chicken layer feed. We have a couple different kinds of chicken feed, but layer is what most people buy. It's for laying chickens that lay. So 50-pound bags. When we bought the store, we were selling about 2 to 3 bags a week, so about 150 pounds of chicken food a week, which is still a good amount. Now we average about 6 to 8 bags a week, which is 300 to 400 pounds, and oftentimes go up to 10 or 12 bags a week. So that's 500 to 600 pounds of chicken food a week that we're selling, which I think speaks to the fact that a lot of towns around us are accepting them, and there are chickens here. And that was the other thing I wanted to say was there are chickens in Villa Park, there are chickens in Elmhurst. I don't think if all of a sudden the board approves it, we're going to be overrun with hens everywhere. I think it'll just make the people that do have them already have peace of mind that they can have them legally. Also, I wanted to talk about the other thing that I've not heard brought up that it's important is garbage disposal. Chickens eat pretty much everything. We have a family of 4. We compost and we recycle. We throw out about half a garbage can a week. Where, you know, when you go around on garbage day, you see people have out 2, 3, 4 cans of garbage. Chickens would even help with that. I found a study where they talked about a village that offered to buy 3 chickens per household. They had 2,000 households sign up, so that was about 6,000 chickens, and the city reduced its decomposable waste stream into landfill by 100 tons in the first month. So it's important to recognize that not only do you get the healthy eggs, it also helps the environment tremendously. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak at this time?
Hello, I'm Emilia Tisowska, and I live 1117 South Leslie Lane. Me and my husband, we are new to Villa Park, and we love the village, and we would like to stay here. But having chickens, being able to raise our own food is very important to us. So this is almost a deciding factor for us to either stay or find a different place to live. I love gardening. I love plants, both ornamental and vegetables. And chickens are excellent pest control. They eat lots of bugs and grubs, and their droppings are excellent fertilizer for both ornamental and veggies. So I feel like having chickens would attract a lot of people to our village and would make our gardens more beautiful. And after all, Villa Park is the garden village, and that was one of the selling points why we chose Villa Park over other places. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I did have one more comment. I did receive a phone call from one Dan Martellata at 215 East Highland, who indicated that he was against chickens. He says he doesn't want to hear the noise because he already has that issue with dogs. One of the reasons staff had recommended following Bartlett's pilot program only was from the standpoint of it's been around for a couple of years. They have 9 permits that have been issued. They have not received one complaint, and it has not increased the workload on their staff to the point they need to hire anybody else to do it. So I just wanted to make that point.
Okay. I have a question. By show of hands, it's not a trick question. Who here has raised a chicken? Okay. Just if we ask for input, I'd like to know who's wasn't trying to trap people into code enforcement violations. That's why I asked who has raised a chicken, not who is raising a chicken. Okay, so at the last meeting, we had consensus that we would put an ordinance together if we had a sense that there was interest from the village board in having an ordinance put in front of them. They've sent it back to us. That seems to imply that there's at least an interest. Doesn't mean it will be approved. Doesn't mean we'll ultimately recommend approval of whatever ordinance gets put together. But now our job is to put that ordinance together. Patrick's recommending this ordinance. Do we want to go through it real quick and see if everything makes sense, and then we can put it into staff's hands to put together a final ordinance? Does that make sense?
There are 15 requirements as part of their pilot program. The first one is that the raising and keeping of chickens shall be permitted on residential zoning lots containing a minimum of 8,000 square feet. I would recommend 7,500 just because of our lot sizes. A maximum of 4 chickens shall be permitted on properties owned and occupied for single-family residential uses. All chickens shall be kept within a covered enclosure or structure with an attached covered enclosed outdoor area to prevent chickens from encroaching onto neighboring properties. An outdoor area, a maximum of 6 square feet per chicken will be required, and a maximum of 100 total square feet will be permitted for both the covered enclosure or structure and outdoor area. All enclosure structures shall be located a minimum of 10 feet from all lot lines. The structure shall contain insulated walls and/or an insulated blanket shall cover the structure during the winter months. All chickens in enclosure structures shall be kept or located in the rear yard only. All areas where hens are kept shall be clean and well maintained with little to no accumulation of waste. In addition, all areas where hens are kept shall not produce or cause odors that are detectable on adjacent properties. Roosters are specifically prohibited. There shall be no slaughtering. No other poultry, including but not limited to geese, ducks, turkeys, shall be kept on the property. An initial building permit shall be required for all enclosures or structures associated with the raising of chickens. A building inspection approval is required prior to obtaining a chicken license. A chicken license issued by the village with a one-time fee of $25 shall be required prior to purchasing chickens. A renewal license shall be required each year thereafter with no additional fee or building inspection required. Proof of registration with the Illinois Department of Agriculture will be required with the annual license. And a maximum of 25 in Bartlett, I would suggest 10 residential zoning lots will be licensed to have chickens in the village at one time.
Okay. Anybody on the commission have issues with any of those? Or think there's anything?
Insulated blanket, what does that mean? I'm fuzzy on putting an insulated blanket over a chicken coop.
In lieu of heat,
In lieu of insulated walls.
right?
I would say that's for the winter.
Yeah.
I know it's for the winter.
We do have some very cold winters, and I think that's an attempt to.
Well, you
try to
picturing a bunch of
provide-
moving blankets over the top? I mean, and that, I guess that's what I'm thinking is, what does a blanket over a structure look like?
I think that any structure,
Should be insulated.
well, it needs to be, we need to have construction guidelines, not just build a structure, you know?
Yeah.
I think there needs to be, I remember one of these villages had actual drawings of, and I don't think that's a bad idea, so you don't get shaky-looking, dumpy things.
There are also, most home improvement stores anymore actually sell chicken
Ready-made.
coops.
Yeah, they do.
That brings up my point, Patrick. I was looking at the Elgin chicken coop standards, and we're looking at 6B on the first page. You know, prefabricated coops shall be allowed, obviously, if they're prefab at these stores. I think that maybe we should take that and kind of conform it to our needs and bring it in there. I personally would rather see some prefabricated coops that look professionally done than, yeah.
Do you want me to test these out?
Yeah, if you want
That's
to
up to you, go for it, please.
Get an idea?
And then in section O of the Bartlett residential chicken application license, I understand you're saying, you know, a residential zoning, maybe we'll have 10 chicken licenses, Patrick, but I mean, I think we've seen more than 10 people that are interested in it. This is just for the pilot, and we'll be increasing that, right?
This is just a pilot
All right.
program. The staff's concern would be, let's say after the period of pilot program has expired, and the village has received several complaints and chooses not to either extend the program or make chicken licenses permanent. How many licenses do we want to track down? 10 or 25? Again, I point out Bartlett. Bartlett is more than twice the size of Villa Park. They've got 9 licenses.
This doesn't address egg sales. I don't think we should allow egg sales.
Under home occupations in the zoning ordinance, retail sales are specifically prohibited on a residential lot.
Unless it's a children's lemonade stand, I take it.
That's expressly prohibited too.
All right, thank you.
I do remember there was one of the ordinances that had sections, cross sections of what was ideal. I don't remember which ordinance that was, but one of the ones we looked at previously was. I know one of the issues that we discussed as well, and it kind of comes into this. I know one of them required them not only to be immovable, but on foundations. I know we had some discussion about whether they should be movable or not, whether we should allow movable coops.
Elgin has foundations.
Yeah, Elgin requires foundations. I understand
Huh?
the pros and the cons. For people who raise chickens, there's obviously might be a desire to move the chickens around the yard. But from a code enforcement standpoint, trying to enforce, especially building code, on a movable object becomes really difficult. Yeah, it's like, I'll give you a chance, but. So I don't know how specific we want to get into that. I know if we get too specific, it obviously will increase the workload on staff as they have to start reviewing design documents for a chicken coop. Which,
I think, in addition to the, like E, where we're so many feet from a lot line, I think we should also consider so many feet from a building. So it's not too close to any residence.
I don't know about building, maybe the residence, I agree,
Well,
but
Yeah, resident.
on the
yeah,
back of a
not
garage or
yeah, not
something
a
like
back
that,
of a
that's
garage.
fine.
Resident.
Naperville had a specific statute, I think it was Naperville, in their ordinance that they could not be within X number of feet of a habited residential dwelling unit.
I have Naperville as 30 feet. So it's either or typically. You can have it off the lot line or from the neighbor or the other structures.
Right. Yeah, and the thing here is, if we require them be 10 feet off of a side yard, 10 feet off the side property line and rear property line, and we require them to be in the rear yard, that's already going to have them, in most cases, at least 20 feet from the nearest house. In many cases, probably much more than that. I'm wondering, I don't know that that's necessarily needed.
We would not likely approve any structure within 10 feet of a principal structure anyway. So in addition to there being 10 feet from all lot lines, there would also be 10 feet from a principal structure.
Right. I'm trying to think of the things that we had before. I remember we discussed whether or not this would count against the maximum number of structures on a property. We discussed that it would. So you could have a house, a garage, and a shed or a chicken coop.
Right.
But not at all
Not both.
four. So that doesn't need to be codified though, because it's in the zoning ordinance, correct?
Well,
Or how would we want to codify that?
the interesting part, the interesting element to this is the fact that staff doesn't see this as being part of the zoning ordinance.
Oh, yeah.
Because the specific prohibition on chickens is actually in Section 5 of the municipal code, not the zoning ordinance. So there would have to be an amendment to Section 5 of the municipal code that would specifically, establish the pilot program and remove chickens from these prohibited animal list.
Okay, so then we would need to add, if we wanted to do that, we would need to add another section here that said it's considered a structure. And you understand what I'm saying? How would we?
I do.
We would need to codify that in that, or would the zoning ordinance's wording address that?
At least until the pilot program has been decided in terms of whether or not they want to keep it or get rid of it. I don't think there's any need to make any specific changes to the zoning ordinance as it relates to accessory structures, and that we include in the pilot program whether or not it counts as an accessory structure or not.
Okay.
Well, that begs into the question that we're gonna have to count dog runs, cages, kennels.
What do we do for a dog?
What are we gonna do about that? I mean, so I don't think it counts as a structure, especially the movable ones that many people are probably gonna go purchase rather than build.
And unless this is specifically on a
Concrete slab,
concrete slab.
which is not important, I don't think. Chickens like
Is it really-
to eat bugs.
Or counting it as an accessory structure.
So, from an enforcement standpoint, does staff have a problem with movable chicken coops?
No.
Because I think we had consensus at the last meeting, but it was loose consensus that we did not want to see movable chicken coops.
I don't remember being at the meeting.
And that's fine
You may not
also.
have been.
I don't know if we were at a consensus. I like the idea.
No, it's just, I know it was one of the items
Oh.
that was put on there.
All
I
right.
don't know what we didn't take a vote on it, obviously. Okay.
I think movable chicken coops would actually be a little more sanitary.
I can agree with that. And the issue is just if your neighbor is always moving in against your fence and you have to call the...
Well, then take a picture and that's breaking the
Yeah,
rules.
no, I know. It's just like having more dogs than you're allowed to have.
Again, the only evidence that I have to point to is, like I say, Bartlett's has been in place for 2 years.
Yeah.
And they've had 0 complaints.
Okay. Okay, so I guess, is that all the comments we had here about the ordinance as it's in front of us? Okay, so anybody that's here have any comments or questions, any additional information they'd like to put forth about what was read tonight, anything they think might be too onerous, or that they think should be in there that's not?
I just wanted to talk about the moving part of it, because like you said, like Commissioner Jackson said, they eat bugs, so that's a big part of why people want them, so you'd want to move them around your yard. And the poop, you know, to move it around rather than just have it stacking up in one spot. But also, I don't know if you guys know this, but chicken manure is very good for a garden. We actually sell it in bags, so a lot of people want it in their
Unscented.
gardens. What?
You sell unscented.
You can smell it, there's no. But if you move the coop around, like you're saying, that keeps the poop, you know, moving around the yard versus all in one spot. That's all I want.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
To the same point about the movable chicken coops, what we do out at the farm is we periodically change their outdoor space, which is on large scale, but the same idea as these movable chicken tractors, which Karen just handed out. These are on wheels. They simply just, you know, you have it here for a week, you have it here for a week. You still have to be, you know, back from the lot line and everything like that. At the farm, what we do is the chickens have a fixed coop that they come in at night, but we change the yard for them. So, you know, as things grow, and then as they kind of deplete the yard down, then we just shuffle them into another yard. And it's good for the chickens. The chickens will eat the grass, they'll eat the bugs, they'll eat the worms, things like that. It's better for the chicken, they're healthier, it's better for the yard, you know, all of that. So to require it to be on a cement pad defeats a lot of the purpose of having the chickens, and it's far more sanitary to be able to move them. The prefab is a great way, you know, especially in this pilot program, where you can just go to the store and you buy all set, ready to go, something like this. It has the little box. To your point about the blanket, I think that what they meant in there is that you can't just have like a cage like this in the winter. There has to be some sort of enclosure to keep them warm. But even in the winter, the chickens will go out and they'll rummage through the snow and they'll get right down in there. So they're pretty hardy animals, but they do need some sort of enclosure for the winter.
Thank you.
They do like to kind of couple up to keep warm in the winter. You can actually have an unheated coop, but protected. One thing that I did want to add, I know Patrick had recommended 4 chickens. I would like to put a minimum of 2 because they are creatures that are very, you know, communal, and they feel safer when they're together. So a minimum of 2, I wouldn't recommend for any chicken, just 1.
Okay. I was actually going to ask about that because I know some of the ordinances do have a minimum.
Yes.
I've seen
and-
some that have a minimum of, I think, 4 or 5. I'm not saying we want to go that high because we're setting our maximum at 4. But
Yeah, I did a little bit of a spreadsheet, but not many have the minimum, but they're all over the place with really high maximum, and a lot of them, like Evanston, has been in place since 2010, Downers Grove 2014, Naperville 2012, and I did personally speak to as many as I could about problems, and after all these years, no complaints. And they're high, high maximum amount. 4 is kind of low. It's under the minimum, or sorry, the average.
Okay. If you've got a nice spreadsheet, could you forward that to Patrick?
I have copies.
Okay, either give him a copy, or if you've got it in an Excel spreadsheet or something, send it to Patrick, because it's always easier to go through regulations, comparing them that way.
Do you want as well? Because I have
Sure, if you've got copies, I'll take them.
They're just the main highlights of the number of hens that they allow. I actually talked to someone in Marion tonight, and they have no regulations. Just like
Where was
like
it?
Chicago.
Where at?
Darien.
Okay.
And I said, you have no problems? He said, no. Everybody just kind of self-regulates, which is really nice. So you can have something relaxed, because pet owners are pretty responsible. And they do become pets. So people like to take care of them.
Any other questions or comments from the commission?
We're going to need to have some covered enclosures in here in Villa Park, I think. Otherwise, we're going to be feeding coyotes. So I think they will take care of their chickens.
Yeah, and it's covered in Regulation C, so that's good. Do you have a comment?
I do have a couple of questions. I wasn't part of this discussion several months ago. Regarding the permit fees, was there an amount that was discussed or agreed upon?
At the time, we did not have a number. I mean, obviously, this ordinance says $25.
Well, if we're going to have...
we really don't have... It's ultimately going to be up to the village board anyway, how much they want to charge for chickens, but what...
Well, I was going to say, if we're going to require an inspection, someone go out, that the fee should reflect that.
Yeah.
And there should probably be some type of a renewal fee as well for the program.
If you are getting if you're building a coop, you will need a building permit, and there'll be permit fees and inspection fees as part of that. So we would recoup our time as it relates to that.
Patrick, what about the prefab coops?
Still, you still would need a
permit. You just need a permit.
A permit
to have the coop there.
Yeah,
correct.
You technically need a permit now to go get a shed from Home Depot and come put it on your property.
Correct.
Most people don't get them, but
but you're required.
But you're required to have one.
Yeah.
That was the $25 fee that you're saying?
No. Building permit, typically it's based on the value of the structure plus a $50 inspection fee.
For the prefab?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, for any chicken coop.
Okay.
So
So the $25 fee would be like registration?
just a registration fee.
One time?
Yep, one time.
No renewal?
Correct.
I see.
Well, you would have to renew it every year, but it would be a no fee
renewal
after that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
With regard to the permit fee for the chicken coop, I think
like, I see a chicken coop more analogous to a doghouse versus a shed, which I totally agree, a shed, because it's not really movable. Would you need a building permit for a doghouse? No. Okay.
But you probably technically would for a dog run. If you're putting up fence.
Yes, you would.
Again, there are probably a number of people who put up dog runs with wood posts and chicken wire and don't come in and get a permit, but.
Like for the example here, it's not really a fence, it's more analogous to a doghouse.
Right.
And probably comparable in size as a doghouse would be.
Yeah.
So, I think it would be kind of laborious to have a permit for something that you put in the back of your truck and bring home.
I tend to agree. Patrick, do you need a permit to build a birdhouse currently in Villa Park?
No,
Oh, okay.
and if you wanted to not require any sort of building permit for these coops, that's entirely up to you to make that recommendation.
Well, for the movable coops, I agree. Maybe for like a structure, if they're building a permanent structure, of course they would need a permit.
Right, right.
So we'd have to have two caveats in there.
That could be a question whenever they come to get a license to have chickens.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just say, the last time we spoke, we asked staff to get information on chicken coops. I think you did a great job on that. For the pilot program, I do think Bartlett's is the simplest for our pilot program. I don't really see anything that would need to be changed, except maybe go to the maximum of 15 instead of 25.
I agree with that, and of course, I agree with the prefab coops being part of that as well, and allowing those.
And that could be something whenever they come to inquire about a license for chickens. You could ask them what kind of coop that they're going to have, how many chickens they're going to have. If they're going to have something like that, I don't think that we would have. I mean, we don't want to make them go out and get a building permit for something of that nature.
Yeah, so I guess where I come down on the permit thing is, we like Bartlett's ordinance. They haven't had any complaints. They do have that in their code. They say it hasn't created any extra work for staff, and I know it's an extra cost, but if staff has to go out, send people out to look at it, $25 doesn't really cover that. So if there's not a permit, I'm willing to bet that the fee will be higher. I know that's not something Patrick can speak to. It'd be up to the village board ultimately. We can make a recommendation, but we can't even, that's not even an ordinance we can get into.
It's only a pilot program.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pilot program.
Okay. So I guess assume there's a consensus for the change to A to 7,500. There's a consensus for including movables for chicken coops. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. As far as the number, we've got 10. Do we want to go to 15?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Consensus for 15.
Do we want to add a minimum of 2 chickens, a maximum of 4?
Yes, let's add a minimum of 2, assuming there's a consensus for that. Yes? Okay. I think that covers it. Any other thoughts, Patrick, on information you need from us to put together an ordinance?
No, and I don't think we need to put together a specific ordinance. I think we send a recommendation for a pilot program to the board, absent any specific type of ordinance.
Correct.
Okay.
Because like I say, staff doesn't envision this as being part of the zoning ordinance anyway.
Correct. So basically, we would send this to them with our recommendation and these notes, and they would hash it out, and then we don't see it again, correct?
Correct. Not unless there was something specific that the village board wanted you to consider.
Right, because it's not the zoning ordinance, it's, yes, I understand. Yeah. Okay, any other questions, comments from the commission?
One of the municipalities had a line for, if it wasn't the owner of the property, they had to have permission from the owner to participate.
Yeah, there's something about a landlord. They need
Yes.
the landlord's permission if it is a home, but if it is a multi-family home, they couldn't have chickens,
Yeah.
something like that. Single-family homes only. I remember seeing that.
I'd like to include, I think we should consider
that's a
something
valid
like that.
point.
Should we, that's a valid point, but also,
Well, yeah, I mean, if you don't own the property, you can't have chickens.
okay,
On the bottom, it says landowner, landlord, or property owner, office. I don't know if you have a copy of that.
yes, also, there's, section B says, shall be permitted on property zoned and occupied for single-family residence uses. So, multi-unit building, even a duplex, is assuming they were rented, not, well, that wouldn't be, it'd have to be zoned.
It wouldn't be
It'd have to be zoned, so if it's zoned for,
anything other than single-family residence.
yeah, okay.
Okay, that was another question I was going to ask. That wasn't really clear in Section A and then Section B. So we're talking about a single-family detached property.
Correct.
That's it?
That's it.
No duplexes, multifamily? Okay.
All right. I think that covers it, unless anybody else has any final words. I think we've got consensus here to forward that to the board for them to
Yep.
deal with. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So, thank you. And thank you to everybody that came out this hearing and the previous two. All right. With that, I think we're done with the regular agenda. Upcoming public hearings? None. Any briefing on village board actions and related matters?
Well, as there are no public hearings scheduled for next month, staff is going to try to get a presentation for the board on how to conduct planning and zoning meetings. CMAP has a program where they will send somebody out and engage in an educational program. So staff is trying to do that for next month.
Okay, cool. So it's sort of like the, is it like the one that they did a couple of years ago where they came out?
Well, it hasn't been done since I've been here, so it would have had to have been more than 5 years ago.
Because I think, well, we've had a lot of turnover in the last year or two, so it doesn't
I
matter.
think it would be a good idea. So that's what staff is going to try to schedule.
All right, sounds good. Any commissioner comments? None? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? We're adjourned.